Hello everyone, welcome to Raising Vibrations. You're with Sabin. And today I'm going to be talking about higher and lower planetary octaves. I feel that this is something in astrology that is spoken about, but I feel that there's an element to it that has been missing. And I feel that today I would like to capture that missing element and maybe invoke within ourselves a sense of imagination around evolutionary potential, and to maybe even at some point also allow us to access the true potential that we as human beings hold within ourselves. So there's loads and loads of fun stuff that I want to digest with you today. And so basically, what I'm trying to say here with regards to higher and lower octaves is that in the astrology sort of community and world, we have this dual rulership with regards to Mars and Pluto, okay? And classic astrology would say that Scorpio is ruled by Mars and Pluto doesn't have that association. In the other form, we've got Mercury, and its lower octave is, or higher octave is Uranus, which to a certain degree actually does make sense. Okay, the Uranus and Mercury higher and lower planetary octaves do make sense to me. The Mars, the Scorpio one does make sense to me, but I feel like there's a sense of non-clarity, which I'm going to bring to you. And then, of course, we have Neptune and Venus. Okay, those are the three higher and lower octave planetary archetypes that we'll begin discussing today. So if you're watching this for the first time or have actually just discovered this in that way, the lower octave is a representation of the planets in the birth chart, or the archetypes in the birth charts. And that's something I also want to say. When dealing with your astrology, it's really, really helpful to say archetypes, okay? Stories, identity associations. It's a lot more easier to understand the nature of you as an infinite being experiencing itself with its own solar system through that lens than actually thinking that there are some of these planetary symbols that are physically moving you in that sense. That's just a physical representation of the multi-universe, okay? Not to kind of like blow our minds away there, but this is the point I'm trying to make. Just use it as archetypes. They're easier for the mind to grasp. Okay, so that we don't spend time trying to understand the scientific method behind why does Jupiter operate the way that it does. Like, how does it work? Our brains cannot comprehend it. It's an intuitive experience. Right, so the lower octaves, planetary octaves, Mercury, Venus, and Mars are the personal planets, okay? Not the sun, not the moon, not Jupiter, not Saturn, but Mercury, Venus, and Mars, okay? So Mercury is the mind that we have, or the mental association in the physical. It's the short-term memory that we have. It's the way that we understand life through linear perception, okay? So today you're listening to this, you're reading some of the words on the screen, okay? That will be Mercury. You are identifying with the phenomena of reality, left brain, okay? Then we have Uranus. So what Uranus is the outer planet, the higher octave of the mind, okay? So we have the mental faculty, Mercury. We have the higher octave, Uranus, higher mind, okay? Now this is how you discern between the two. The higher mind is the archetypal structure existing outside the boundary of time, Saturn. Saturn is time. Saturn is the consciousness boundary in which we experience ourselves in physical form. So because Uranus exists outside the boundary, therefore it is then a transpersonal planet, leaving us in a situation where the nature of the archetype is existing outside our physical senses. And so therefore it operates through non-linearity. This is why you'll notice that in all of my discussions, I always talk about Uranus as the fragmentation and blueprints of the future. In other words, the sparks of information that happen in flashes but have no context in terms of your current space-time reality, your life. It doesn't make sense. It's like, how am I getting that flash? It doesn't integrate where I am right now. It's because the information that is being poured from the higher mind into the physical is coming from an idea. It's that flash of exactly that, like that aha moment, right? The epiphany. And you have it, and it fractures the paradigm of what you saw, and then all of a sudden you're liberated. Does that make sense? So Mercury, lower mind, higher mind, Uranus. Okay? Does everybody grasp that concept? So therefore, the same thing applies when it comes to Neptune and Venus. Okay? Venus, again, lower planetary archetype, rolling around pencil. The lower archetype, Venus, my inner and outer relationship to myself on a human level. How do I sustain myself on the physical plane through my resources and values that I contain and have, my needs? Then, when I sell those needs or give my time for those needs, and in return, I am then seeking something in return. I'm always asking for something in return. So for me, as an example, I do a lot of work in a Neptunian way, which I'll talk about. But then there's a lot of work that I also do to sustain my physical existence for me to carry on the work that I do. So therefore, I have astrology schools, I have classes that I teach on asteroids and transits and stuff that I ask for a certain energy refund. And that is Venus. It's something that I ask for in return. Right? So I paint a painting and then I give it to the gallery, and the gallery then sells it, and I get a certain energy refund back for the time I spent doing it. Neptune, remember, is now outside the Saturn boundary. It's existing as a transpersonal planet, will then represent where we are devoted. We are in devotion to something that is inspirational, that we don't ask for something in return. Not that we don't ask for it, that it is something that we surrender to as a higher meaning. So a lot of the work that I do on YouTube is designed for souls that are looking to get into a state of understanding regarding evolutionary dynamics. And once they're there and they understand the dynamics of abundance, then at that point you can start manifesting your own reality. So it's like using the sustenance to be able to do this work on a devotional level, writing articles, working with other souls that are on the path. And we all do this. Every single one of us has that archetype in our consciousness where we are devoted to something that we don't get something back in return. And it is, in essence, in biblical terms, God's work, or in New Age, sort of new paradigm thinking, the source. I'm here to be of service as a higher dimensional being, as an example, right? Whatever serves your feeling of not wanting something back in return. So Neptune transcends that necessity for getting something in return physically, but something in return spiritually, being humbled by the experience, okay? Then you have Pluto and Uranus, Pluto and Scorpio, or Pluto and Mars, right? So the clarity and distinction I want to make here is that whenever we are on the earth in our existence, we need insight into experiences that fractures the physical limitations of what we perceive, so we can then get to the next phase of our evolutionary discovery. Otherwise we would stay stuck. Uranus, Mercury. Neptune and Venus shows us how we sustain our physical existence, but also how we devote ourselves to the nature of our higher purpose. Neptune, Venus. Okay, very clear. Whereas Mars and Pluto correlates to how we actualize the nature of our desires. Okay, so the actualization is Mars, which means that in our physical vehicle, our physical existence, it's how we go about actualizing those desires. How do we act? How do we make choices and leads us in directions, right? Whereas Pluto is operating in the same dynamic, but its higher octave is the unconscious motion that is moving us in that direction. So it's like these desires emanate from deep within ourselves. And then as we become more conscious of the desire in physical form, we act on it, Mars. So the reason why they would be together is because they're actually the same archetype, just that one's, again, operating on a higher dimensional, or should I say transpersonal. It's outside the boundary of physical awareness. So we're dealing with higher or transpersonal planets, archetypal structures that remind us of the nature of creation as it is, and then the lower archetypal structures reminding us of the physical incarnation that we're using to evolve that higher dimensional meaning. And if you can grab this and understand it and fully integrate it into your life, then you will be completely and utterly understanding what the new moon in Pisces is about, including the solar eclipse. The higher and lower octaves integrated into the physical. In other words, the earth plane is where higher and lower dimensional realities meet. Okay, that is the creation. We are in the center, and we're here to balance that story. Spirit into matter. We're not trying to be spiritual beings. We're trying to be incarnated into the physical, and we're using the human vehicle as a way to evolve the creation. Does that make sense? Okay. So now that we have that like deeper understanding put through, I want to use this, what you're seeing on the screen now, as an example to show you why astrology operates the way that it does. Okay. What you're looking at here is something that I feel is really essential to use and to comprehend and to understand when allowing yourself to figure out why we use astrology as an example, or the natal chart as an example, to objectify our lives. Like, how does this connect? How does this work? Why is it so incredibly synchronistic in that way? What method, and so on. So what I want to show you here is two things. Firstly, I want to say, for each of us that tries to figure out the nature of the connection that we have to source, and then through astrology, using astrology and saying Uranus is moving in that orbit, how does that affect us on planet Earth? Well, this would be the best way to answer that question, okay? But then also at the same time, to allow your life to unfold in a way where you actually see that the transits, progressions, natal experiences are literally showing up in your life. Okay, so to focus on the actual human transformation versus the logistics about how that's operating. The reason why is because, yes, deep down inside, we want to figure out the truth. How do we trust this? What happens if we shifted our awareness and asked ourselves, maybe instead of focusing on that like small detail, let's actually allow our lives to unfold, like I said, in a way where the astrology, through us objectifying it, reveals to us the experience and how that is actually validating itself. For me, where I work with so many people in terms of their own astrology charts, I get exposed to an incredible amount of synchronicities. I mean, this is consistently being validated to me every single day. So without even needing to understand the orbit of Jupiter and how that affects us and what is the sort of human mind perspective on the situation, I actually have people show up in my lives where they have Jupiter square Saturn, and that square shows up as a crisis in their belief system regarding how to be authoritative. And I'm like, yep, validated. Even in my own life, for example, in my own astrology chart, which you're looking at today. So that's what I want to shift. I want to shift our capacity to stop looking at, or stop wasting time, or all of our time, on those little small details that just go, oh, okay, that's why that's, and then get onto the transformation stuff. But to actually get onto the transformation stuff, allow that to answer your question, and you transform at the same time, right? Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is objectify that the astrology chart is 360 degrees, okay? When we look at the dimensions of a pentagram and the pentagon with relationship to phi, the golden ratio, we see that there's 360 degrees, okay? Now, Leonardo da Vinci himself drew this experience to reflect to us the actual geometry and the geometric shapes that we on the physical dimension exist on, okay? And this is really, really important. The physical dimension is the earth plane. So as you are a human being incarnating from spirit into flesh, you are then incarnating into the dynamics of this physical plane and the principles and laws that naturally govern it. So in the physical, your body is a representation of your creation, i.e. your spirit, and the body is the vehicle that the spirit is experiencing itself through. And so those dynamics, geometric shapes, geometric angles, degrees, etc., okay, as you can see over here, right? As you can see with the circle, those geometric shapes are literally the astrology chart, the 360 degrees. So this is a representation of the physical geometric shape you're existing on, and then shown through nature, i.e. in the golden ratio, okay, and the pentagram and pentagon that gets created. These are the dynamics we're dealing with. So those symbols are coming from above, if you want to use that in terms of that word, and then incarnating themselves into the physical, if you want to use a hierarchical dimensional status. So physical, then emotional, then mental, etc. Or if you just want to recognize it as that you are a solar system, and that the centerness is you there, your geometric shapes, the centeredness is you there, and that the planets themselves are revolving around you, and this is the solar system that you are bound to. So just as Earth has a solar system, so do you. You are on Earth, which means that the center, the actual Earth itself, is a representation of your physical incarnation, just as the outward is reflecting in. So you, your body, your Earth, matter, your boundaries, has a solar system, and that solar system would be then the planetary archetypes and configurations around. And the geometric angles and shapes would reveal to you your state of becoming. That's why evolutionary astrology is so incredibly revolutionary in its paradigm, because it goes, we are in a constant state of becoming. So all planetary archetypes that are in relationship to each other and that are reflecting the natal aspects are in a constant state of becoming. So in this case, Saturn and the Sun have a relationship to each other in this chart. Okay, you can see their conjunction, as it were. You can see that Mars and Venus have a relationship to each other, and they also have a relationship to the node over there. They also have a relationship to Uranus and Jupiter. So if you see it as planets in relationship to each other that are in a consistent state of becoming, then you will perceive this as an evolutionary cycle that you are evolving through relative to the desire, i.e. the desire to incarnate in this plane of existence, right? When you can see that, you actually transcend the physical flesh to understand yourself as the infinity, as an evolving being, and then you incarnate yourself back into the physical and allow your natural desires in the physical, in the flesh, to be the way the soul is going to actualize that. In other words, the soul's already going to naturally evolve itself. So if you are in the way, which is what we do, we are confused. We look at life and we confuse it with all this hullabaloo. But really it's just this, okay, I have natural desires, and I wish to fulfill those natural desires. And if I listen to myself in a very deep and peaceful way, or holistic way, then I will know how to evolve those, because they will be very present with me. As an example, in my case, what you're really wanting to do is just become conscious of the dream, just become awakened in the dream, just become realistic and understanding of those desires. And then you just watch how they evolve through you, and then you respond to them emotionally. And that leaves then, of course, the way you experience this journey. Does that make sense? And it's pretty profound in that way, because it shows how this map over here is a reflection of the physical dimensions in which the physical body is on. And this is the Saturn principle. This is our boundaries. So we incarnate into those boundaries. It's like, do you see it? Do you see how if you're living in the States at this stage or in Australia, in order to go to those different countries, you would need to go through time, which is motion. Now, the reason why you have to go through that is because your physical body cannot transport you to that other piece or that other part of the world in an instant. So what you have to do is experience the limitations of the physical earth. Those limitations themselves produce the breeding ground for us to actually actualize ourselves. So if we had to reject the physical as something that is not what we enjoy, and that we want these idealisms and these higher dimensional states of consciousness, then all we're doing is going, well, it's fun to play out in my imagination, but my physical reality is still staying the same. And this is the number one key why we struggle to actualize ourselves, because we're not actually evolving the physical vehicle or allowing the emotions and the higher dimensional awareness to be anchored into the physical body for it to actually experience it. So it never changes, because you see everything through the physical senses, the phi ratio. It's pretty neat, isn't it? Okay, guys, thanks very much for allowing me to share this with you today. Part 2 to this video series is coming up, and part 2 will be where I will actually break down the Mars, Venus, and Mercury archetypal structures in the 360-degree wheel, as well as Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus, and we'll get a deeper understanding of how to actually transmute that. But for today, I think this is a lot of information to digest. I really ask you to spend some time reflecting upon this stuff, and if you obviously want to have questions, please write in the comments below. That would be great. Other than that, have a fantastic week. Take care. Bye-bye.